In this video, I'm going to be demonstrating how to paint human hands from beginning to end. Human hands are known to be notoriously hard to paint, and a lot of artists struggle with painting human hands. There's a lot of technicalities involved in painting the human form and the hands. But we're going to focus on painting hands today. I'm not going to show you guys how I drew the hands. This lesson isn't going to be for drawing. It's going to be specifically for painting the hands. I'll do another video in the future showing how you draw the hands to get the proportions right. But in this video, I'm going to show you guys how you do your shading, your blending, right? To bring out the details in the hand to make it look as realistic as possible. This particular lesson is going to be a realism painting lesson. However, it doesn't matter what your style is. A lot of the tricks and methods used in this video can be applied to any style, right? So you can still tune in and you'll get a lot of value from this video. Art is about having fun with it and being patient, right? If you're not having fun, it's not going to be worth your time. Art is about making mistakes and correcting the mistakes. It's simply a series of making mistakes and correcting, making mistakes and correcting. That's really what art is. It's just patience and consistency. So for those of you who struggle with painting the human hands is like that final boss, right? Of you crossing that threshold and getting really good at your art, right? If this is you, this is the video for you. So without any further delay, let's jump into this lesson. So this particular hand right here, this is the right hand, right, that I'm about to paint. This is the right hand. So my paint is already mixed. I have my primary color, whatever color I choose that I want the hand to be. If I'm painting a brown person, a white person, etc., I pre-mix the color, right, of the skin tone. And then I would create all my tones around that primary tone that I choose. So depending on whatever shade of brown the skin is, around that shade is where I'm going to create my shades, other shades. So my lights and my darks, right? Now, a color that I always tend to use whenever doing human skin tone is burgundy and red. And I'll explain, the reasons as we move along. So let's go ahead and start here. So what I'm doing first is I'm going to apply the color of the skin tone. That's the first thing I'm doing. So this is a brown hand, right? This is a brown skin tone. So let's go ahead and apply that to these hands. And again, in this tutorial, we're gonna go from start to finish. All right, we're gonna go from start to finish. All right, so again, this is my particular method. This is how I choose to paint human hands, right? Different artists have different methods of doing the same thing, different techniques, this is just my technique. But this may work for a lot of you out there, it may not, right? But for those of you who your style is similar, or you think this style will work for you, by all means, go ahead and practice this particular style. Even if this style isn't necessarily your style, there may be a few things here and there you could implement into your workflow. All right, so I'm just filling in with the primary color of the hands. Right, this is the primary color. So I'm filling in and I'm staying really close to the lines that is already there, because that's the proportion that I'm working with. All right, so I'm just staying really close to those lines to keep that proportion. All right, I don't want to mess that up, because that's the prep. Right, the prep is what you do before you start painting. You prep, you draw out your figure, and when you're ready to paint, you just go along those lines that you already drew out. So fill this in. As I get closer inside the fingers, I may switch the brush out to a smaller brush. I may, depending on how difficult it becomes. So let's see. Again, so you want to fill in, fill in, fill in. All right. And I try to go as smooth as possible with how I lay the paint. So I don't want to leave too many ridges in between the brush strokes, right? I don't want to leave too many ridges in between the brush strokes. So I kind of try to smooth it as I go along. I try to smooth it out. All right, so we're getting closer to the fingers. And once again, I try to stay within the lines that I already drew, because when I was drawing it, all these little details, like these little curves and all of that, was well thought out, right? It was well thought out because I want to make it look as realistic and as 3D as possible. And the human form has a lot of curves in it, right? One of the things that challenges artists a lot is creating things with too many straight lines, things that's supposed to have a lot of curves in it. And that's the thing about nature itself. Nature itself has a lot of curls, right? If you look into nature, it has a lot of swirls, a lot of curves, and that's just a natural thing with nature. So as an artist, keeping that in mind helps you to develop a style closer to 3D that looks more realistic, right? As human beings, we like straight lines for whatever reasons. Human beings, we love straight lines. But again, nature teaches us that or we can look at nature and see that nature, in fact, loves curves, right? And as Alan Watts said one time, nature loves squiggly lines. right? And it's true when you look at different things, you look at wavelengths, you look at all these things, it's curved lines. And I guess it has to do with the way energy moves, and the way um, wavelengths travel. So let me not try to get too scientific here. So again, I'm following these lines very carefully to keep the shapes that I worked so hard to get when I was actually drawing this hand. So I'm trying to stay really close within those lines because I don't want to, as I paint, because what could happen and what happens sometimes is when you draw out your object as you're painting, if you're not careful and your hand keeps moving too much, you end up changing the shape of your object. And sometimes you don't want that to happen because it could end up throwing off your proportions. All right. So you want to stay as close as possible within the lines. And one of the most important things with the human form, whether it's human hands, whether you're drawing an entire body, one of the most important things with the human form is flow. You want to get that flow, right? You want to make it look like it's in motion, because whenever you look at a hand, even if it's a still hand, even if it's still not moving, you still see motion, right, in the human body parts. So what makes hands stand out when it's painted or drawn is when the artist captures that motion in the body part, in the hand, right? That natural motion where it looks like it's in motion. That's what gives it the life. That is what gives it that 3D feel, right? So you always want to try to get motion in hands when you're drawing human hands. Great artists, that's what they mastered. And this is why some of these artists, even back in the Renaissance era and times, those times, some of them actually went as far as to study human anatomy, right? And I'm talking about hands-on, where they will go into the hospitals and study human anatomy, right? Nowadays, I don't think artists need to do that. And the reason for me, what I believe is because of technology, and, they didn't have all this technology back in the day where you could go on YouTube, you could get a course, and you could actually access this information without having to go into an institution, right? So that's the difference. So today we could just get this information online, etc. We could look at videos, we could look at images and just see and learn the human form, like human anatomy, right? So we're almost there. Just gonna finish this out. Finish this out. All right. Just these fingers. See right there? So this is a good example of what I was talking about earlier. You don't want to, because the brush almost forced me to come out on this finger. The issue that would create for me is it makes the finger longer, and that'll take away from the proportion of how the hand is supposed to look. So I'm glad this happened so that you could see how you correct things like this. So I'm not just gonna go with the mistake. I'm gonna take that off and keep it within the lines. I'm creating a whole mess. But I keep a bottle of spray water on hand with my rag so that I could clean up stuff like that. So just spray a little bit on this and just clean that up. I really should be using a smaller brush for that, which is what I'll go ahead and do. So let me use a smaller brush. All right. So I'm gonna get me, this is a smaller brush. I put a little bit of water on the brush before using it. That's to kind of just make it a little more pliable, soften it up a little bit. And also to soften up the paint so that I get the paint, I can have the paint flowing a little better, right? So, okay, so that's the tone of the hands that I'm going with. So this is what I'm gonna do. I'm not gonna sit around and wait for this to dry before I start applying my contrast, right? And putting details in there. What I would do is grab my blow dryer and I'll dry it. So okay, so that was the first application, right? So you will notice that there is still some spaces in between, right? What I would do is I'll just go in here one more time, not as meticulous as the first time, but I'll just go over some of these clear spaces, right? Just kind of fill in some of these spaces. Now, again, depending on the type of artwork you create, you may not need to do this, right? If you're using, loose brush strokes technique, or you're just going for a minimalist approach, etc., you may not need to do this, right? This, the reason I'm doing this is because I'm going for a realism feel, right, with this hand. Okay, now that that is done, go over it again. The reason I use a blow dryer is I don't want to sit around and wait for this to dry before I start adding in detail, right? There are times when you don't want your paint to dry too fast, but there are times when you do, right? And this is one of them. I don't want to sit around and wait for this to dry, so I use a blow dryer to dry it so that I could keep going, right? Keep my flow, stay in the flow, right? So that's just a technique I learned and it works well for me, right? It helps me to work faster and more efficiently as opposed to sitting around and waiting for the paint to dry. And another challenge that some artists have is they don't really know the blow dryer technique, so they keep going. And what happens is, because the paint is still wet in certain places where you don't want it to be wet, it creates issues for them. Now, again, this only applies to this style that I'm using, right? This realism style, right? If you're using loose strokes and you're not going for a lot of details, it probably won't matter that much, right? So just keep that in mind. So the next thing I do here is I'm going to go for the darker areas of the hands first before I go to the light, right? Again, shapes come from the way light bounces off of an object. You're going to notice the dark areas just kind of seamlessly go into the light areas. And the dark areas are typically going to be the more prominent highlights of an object, right? And it's going to go into the light areas. So one of the things I do to get the right ambience with the dark areas of an object, especially when you're dealing with the human figure, is I'm going to use this same tone and I'm going to darken this exact tone just a little bit, right? To give me the right shade. So I'm going to darken it just a little bit. I'm going to start here. Just make sure that's right. That's a little too dark for what I want to do for now. So I'm going to go, see right here, I have all my tones from dark all the way to light. And in the middle is the tone of the hand. So I'm going to come here. I'm not going to go all the way to the darkest side yet. I'm going to come right about here first, right? I'm going to start shading because this is what is going to give me my detail, right? I'm going to start shading. And this is going to give me the muscle tones and all of that. That's actually what this is going to help me with, right? All those areas of the hand that gives it its features, right? Start shading in. Right, again, I don't want to go too dark just yet, right? I don't want to go too dark just yet. I'm going to start blending this in. All right. So as we get closer to the fingers, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a smaller blending brush. All right. Let me go with this one. I'm going to go with this to help me fade in smaller areas. Right, so I'm going to come and then I'm moving a little fast because acrylic dries relatively fast, so you want to keep a certain pace, right, to not have to deal with too many lines. You want to have even shading, right? You want your shading to be even, so you don't want too much lines. And again, and you will hear me repeat this a lot, this is just my style, right? This is the techniques, the style that I choose to go with. This is how I accomplish my details, my work. This is how I do it. All right. So as I go along, what I'm doing here is I'm actually starting to put the details, the actual details of the hands in. Whenever you're doing and I should say just in general, right? Just in general, the right tools is important, especially if your style is realism. The right tools is important. So with this here, because it's a small canvas, I'm gonna go ahead and just turn it, right? So that I could kind of get in here, get right in here. It's trying to move a little bit, but just so that I could get in here to help me get this detail. All right. I'm gonna turn it back this way. And this here, I'm gonna come this way. Then I'm gonna jump back to this brush really quick. I'm just gonna wet the tip here real quick. Just wet it just a little bit to help me with the flow, right? Because the more your brush dries, is the harder it gets to keep the flow, right? So I keep some water close by, and that just kind of helps me to keep my brushes soft. I'm gonna give you another little trick real quick. So I'm doing the blending now, right? And I started with the darker shades, right? But every time I dip my brush into the paint, I have this cloth right here. What I do is I just rub the brush on the cloth. And what that does is when I apply the paint, it's not too harsh. Because if I dip it in here and just put it on here, it's gonna be too harsh for what I'm trying to do, right? So I just kind of wipe some of the paint off before attempting to put it on to the canvas. And again, as I keep stressing, every artist's style is different. You have artists who will use very different methods to accomplish this same thing, right? This is just my route the steps that I take and the techniques that I use. Right, so I'll just kind of go over this with the blow dryer. And what I'm gonna do here is for the thumb right here, I don't really like this too much, right? I think it's too much of a curve and it's taking away from how realistic the thumb could look. So I'm just gonna flip this to the side. I'm gonna just it's just a little too dramatic. So I'm just gonna take some of that out. Just fill in here just a little bit. Because the good thing is you can make adjustments as you go, right? You can make adjustments as you go. You know, if something looks off, you can fix it. If a finger looks too long, too short, you fix it as you go, right? That's the beauty of art. Art is mostly about problem solving, right? That's really what art is about. It's about problem solving. The better you are at problem solving, I think the better artist you're going to be. And it's all practice. It's all practice and patience, right? You know, sometimes, and even me, I've experienced it where you kind of get frustrated if you're not getting certain things, but it's practice. So now that I have my dark areas shaded in, I want to start going for my light contrast, right? So this is going to be the third layer, right? Layer one was the shade or the tone of the hands. Layer two was the dark areas or the shadows that's on the hand. And now I'm going to be adding in the third layer, which is going to be the light areas where the light is bouncing off of the hand, right? And this is where that 3D look comes in, right? So I'm going to go with where I mix the light paint, right? And I'm going to start. I'm not going to go too light just yet, right? Because I'm building on it. That's another thing with painting objects with a lot of detail. You have to build on it. So you can't rush it, but you just kind of build on it. So I'm going to test just to make sure paint isn't too light, because if it's too light, it's actually going to take away from the effect that I'm trying to get if it's too light. So I don't want it to be too light. Just want it to have just the right shade. All right. Again, it's all problem solving. So it's all problem solving. So now that I started putting in the lighter areas, there is a slight gap in between my light and my dark, right? Let me show you what I do to address that, to fix that. There is kind of a little gap. So what I do is I'll get some of this red, this burgundy reddish color, and I'll mix it with the darker tone, right? So I'll just go a little lighter right here with the red. And I'm going to use that kind of as a filler in between the dark and this light that I just put in there. So I'm just going to kind of use the red kind of just in between certain places, right? And that's just kind of to help with the contrast as it transitions from the dark to the light. This is going to help make the transition softer. I know you could see, you're starting to see that slight little red in there, right? So it's softening up that transition from the dark to light, so that the transition is seamless and it's not too harsh. So all the places that I already put the darker tones down, I'm just kind of going around it and even over it in some places just to soften that up. Because realistically, that's actually how light works and how light bounces off of an object, or in this case, human body parts, right? In this case, being the hands, right? There's this sort of transition that happens naturally. So that is what I'm creating here. I'm creating this transition. And again, if you're looking at this video, the good thing is you can, slow this video down. You could stop it wherever you need to and go over the details until you fully understand it, right? That's the good thing. My brush is kind of dry. Let me show you what I do for that. I take my spray bottle, my water, and I just spray my brush just a little bit, right? And that's just to get it flowing again. Because sometimes, the brush gets too dry and it kind of makes it a little challenging. So nice. Right here on the thumb, I'm actually going to lighten that up just a little bit. So I'm kind of working in reverse right here, right? So I'm going to just kind of lighten that up just a little bit with some red in there. I'm just going to lighten it just a little bit. And the reason I'm doing that is, so what I'm doing here now is I'm actually going over the dark shadow with the skin tone color, right? With the skin tone. And what that does is it's going to soften up the darkness just a little bit, because I need it to be softer, because this part of the thumb is actually at the inside of the palm of the hand, right? So it's technically a little lighter. I'm still gonna leave the shadow effects, but I'm just lightening just a little bit, right? And then I'm gonna go even lighter on the top here. Right? Create some light. And right here, I don't worry too much about going some of the shading going outside of the lines here, because that could always be fixed later on. I'm more concerned with getting the shading right. Yeah, I'm more concerned with getting the shading right. So I'm gonna just turn this to the side so that I can get to this area right here. So I'm gonna follow this line and I'm gonna lighten this up really nice. Coming into the tip of the fingers. Lighten this up really nice. I'm gonna come down the middle right here. All right. Again, I'm not going too bright, if you notice, right? I'm not going too bright with the light areas just yet. And you'll see why in a second, why I'm not going too bright just yet with these lighter areas. And it'll make perfect sense to you when I get to that junction and I explain to you why I'm not going all the way light just yet. Again, it's a gradual process. It's a gradual process. You want to take your time and gradually blend, right? You want to gradually blend so that you don't get ahead of yourself. Because it's kind of easy to get ahead of yourself with art if you're not paying close attention. So the other thing I want to do here is I want to just lighten this up a little bit, right? Because I kind of don't like what it's doing there. So what I'm going to put here is the actual skin tone, right? I'm going to use that here. I can't go too light on it because it's going to look weird, right? So what I want to do is use the natural skin tone and just kind of go over it. And what it would do is it would give it more of a natural type of look. I want to do the same thing right here. All right. Again, I can't stress enough that art is about troubleshooting, right? And problem solving. So all these areas that I put in the darker tones, what I'm doing here now is I'm using the actual skin tone color that I mixed, right? The skin tone, I'm using it very lightly and I'm going over the dark areas so that they don't look too dark, right? Or too overpowering, right? I don't want it to look too harsh. So I'm just kind of going over it just a little bit. I don't want to overdo it, right? And if there are places where I felt like I overdo it, I could just go back with the dark of just a little bit using the same brush. And I'm just gonna kind of just go over it just a little bit. Just kind of fix the proportion just a little bit, right? I'm gonna wipe my brush in my cloth and I'm just gonna go over it, right? So right here, I want to fix something here real quick. I want to come here, put some of that, go a little darker, right? A little darker right there. All right. Because I kind of feel like, the wrist, that knob on the wrist area I felt like I had it a little too far up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move it to about here, right? So you see how I'm doing that. So I'm going to clean the brush, clean the dark off of the brush. I'm going to get my blow dryer. What I'm going to do here is it's already dark right here. So I'm going to walk it back up. No, I can't just put a light coat of paint right there. It's not going to look right. So what I have to do is I have to use the original skin tone just about right here, right? Use the original skin tone, right? Then I'm gonna go with the blow dryer, dry that. Because I don't have all day to sit around while I'm flowing to wait for that to dry, right? I'm gonna go back again with some of the original skin tone just right there. Not too much. I'm gonna blend it in. If you notice how I'm using the brush, I'm actually blending it in, right? Now what I'm gonna do is just right down here, I'm gonna kind of come with the natural skin tone just down here. Now I'm gonna go lighter. I'm gonna get some of the light paint and I'm gonna correct that. All right. I kind of feel like it's important that in real time you get to see me make a correction, right? I kind of feel like it's important that you get to see that in real time. So let me go here with some of the darker color shade and I'm gonna come right here with it just to make this look a little more realistic. right? I'm gonna come down here. I'm gonna darken here up just a little bit. It's a little too much light up under here. Just darken that a little bit. I'm gonna kind of come around. Right. Cool. So now what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna start fading. I'm gonna start adding, I should say, some lighter tones. So I'm gonna get some white, right? Get some white. Just add it in here, right? See that? So I'm gonna lighten this up just a little bit more. Again, you wanna do this in stages, right? So I'm lightening this up just a little bit more. And this is gonna help give that nice 3D effect, right? So certain areas where there is even more light bouncing off of the hands, that is what I want to focus on now. There's certain areas where there's even more light bouncing off. These areas, I'm just kind of filling in all these areas where there's a lot of light bouncing off of the hands. Where the most light, I should say, is bouncing off of the hands. That's what I'm doing now. I'm filling in those areas. It's a little process, right? But you take your time and you just gradually build on it, and you build on it and build on it. Right here, I wanna add in some of the natural tone, right? I wanna add in some of the natural tone right here. So I wanna make this look a little more natural. So I'm gonna go just a little darker. I'm just gonna kind of fill in right here so that it flows a little better. Right? It's all about flow, right? It's all about flow. I want it to flow better, so nice. So I'm gonna go again. This time I'll grab this smaller brush. I'll go for the light color. I'll just come in these little areas where there's a lot of light hidden. Just these little areas where a lot of light is bouncing off of the fingers. All these areas where we have a lot of light. So earlier I was saying earlier that you don't want to go too light when you start shading in to get light contrast. And this is the reason, because you want to be able to build on it until you get to the right light contrast. If you start too early trying to add bright light into your object, it'll just spoil it, right? And it won't give you that 3D effect. So You have to do it gradually and just build on it. Right here, I'm gonna just kind of widen this area, knuckle area. So this is what I'm gonna do now. Now I'm gonna take this brush, the small one, and I'm gonna add in some detail in the knuckle, right? This is how I do this. The knuckle, just add in some details. I'm gonna get an even smaller brush. Again, I'm gonna go dark. I'm gonna use this brush and get some more details, right? Now again, another thing I'm doing is I'm just using a slightly darker shade in this area, right? I'm not going too crazy with the shading to make it too dark, right? I want it to look as natural as possible. So this is why I'm using a shade that is not too dark. So now I'm gonna come right here and I'm gonna add in the fingernails. So I'm just gonna outline where the fingernails is gonna be. All right, I'm just outlining it. Some water on my brush. Line that. All right. On this one, I'm gonna shorten it just a little bit because I felt like I made it a little too long. I'm gonna shorten that, and I can just fix that. All right. Let me show you how I fix that. I'm just gonna do like that. I'm just gonna add some light in to the knuckles, into those little creases, just to give it a little realistic appearance. Just in the way light bounces off of it. Over here on the thumb, I'm gonna do the same thing. So for the nails, I'm gonna use the same color that I used to shade in the light areas. That's what I'm gonna use for the nails, right? Because realistically, I don't want to go too light, right? I'm probably just gonna add just a little bit more white in it. Just a little bit more white in there. Another thing I want to do is I want to pay attention to where light is bouncing off. So for instance, like right here, this finger is casting a shadow on this finger. So the nails on this finger is gonna have a shadow on it, right? So I have to be careful to add that in to give it that realistic look and feel, right? Let me show you how I'm gonna do that. Because I don't want this nail to be the same color as the ones that are in directly in the light. So I'll come back to that in just a second. Let me go ahead here and fill this in. I'm gonna get my blow dryer. Right here, I'm gonna just darken that a little bit because there's kind of a shadow being casted on this finger. So just darken the nails just a little bit. I have to keep wetting my brush to get the paint to flow better. Just kind of fade it just a little bit. Just kind of blend it so that it don't look too harsh. Kind of do the same thing on this side, this corner. Anywhere where there's shadows, I want to create shadows on the nails as well. Right, so any corners where there are shadows, all right, this one as well. It's just these little details that make your work look more professional. Simple little details. So what I'm gonna do here next is I'm just gonna add some more light into the nails. I'll just give it a nice realistic look. So I'm gonna come on one side, go a little lighter. I'm just gonna add some more light. The other thing I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna just kind of go around the nail with that shadow, that natural shadow around the nails itself. The thing about art is it's really mostly about paying attention to details, right? The better you are at paying attention to detail is the more prolific you're gonna be as an artist. Pay attention to details. I think I want to lighten up this thumb a little bit right here and add a little more red in there. So let me do that.